Hey friends, Miss Byrne here again, and we're going to continue talking about algebra. Today's learning target is I can identify independent and dependent variables in real-world problems. You're going to need a pencil, your notebook, and then there will be a worksheet today. So right now I want you to take a second just to think about it. You don't have to pause the video here, but unless you want to, but just think about, what do you think the word independent means? And then what do you think the word dependent means? So I'm trying to think about things in my life that I think are independent. So I know my friends and I always like joke around and say like, oh, like I'm a strong and independent woman, which means like I don't have to rely on anyone else. And then like I know that we talk about how in middle school you have a little more independence. In taxes, a dependent means like a kid of somebody, so that the kid depends on the parents for money. So that may be a couple different ways that you think about independent and dependent. However, when I thought of this, I was thinking of a couple different things. So first I thought of The Good Place, and this one says, I'm a strong, independent acid snake in the skin suit of a strong, independent woman. And I thought that was funny, and basically that she doesn't need him to do anything for her. She can do it all by herself. Beyonce and Destiny's Child, Independent Woman, all about that. All about that. Right. And also Miss Independent, Miss Kelly Clarkson. Oh, love, love, love those songs. And then when I thought about dependent, I thought about the over-attached girlfriend meme that I think some of you have seen before. So I was laughing at that. And then I've become dependent on social media, which I think a lot of us could probably joke around and say, but we're trying to become independent from social media, especially in these times. But I thought those were kind of fun. However, let's get the actual definition. So now we're going to talk about independent variable and dependent variable. So we're not just saying independent and dependent. We're going to talk about the actual variable part. So an independent variable, let's grab my little, oops, not pen. Sorry, guys. These are pointer. Okay, so we got independent variable, okay? The variable that does not rely or depend on another variable to determine its value, okay? So it doesn't rely on anything else. It's all by itself. It doesn't need something else to be put into the equation to determine what its value is. We can just tell it what its value is because it's independent. Dependent is the variable that relies or depends on the independent variable. So the dependent and the independent variable have a relationship where the dependent variable relies on the independent variable. So the dependent variable is going to depend on whatever the independent variable is. So if the independent variable changes, the dependent variable will change. So for independent variables, x typically represents the independent variable. And when it's graphed, it's on the x-axis. So on that horizontal line, that's where you're going to graph the independent variable. An example of this would be if your family's driving 60 miles per hour down a freeway, the distance you go depends on the time you are traveling. So this means the time is the independent variable because the distance relies on the time. When we're talking about dependent variables, y typically represents the dependent variable. So when it's graphed, it's going to go on the y-axis, which is that vertical line, up and down. An example of this would be a bookstore owner sells books for $5. The total amount of money a bookstore owner earns depends on the number of books purchased. So the total amount of money is the dependent variable. The total amount of money you make depends on the number of books purchased. All right, so we're going to do an example together. So here's our example. Marcus reads for 30 minutes each night. He wants to determine the total number of minutes he will read over the course of a month. He wrote the equation T equals 30 times D to represent the total amount of time that he has spent reading, where T represents the total number of minutes read and D represents the number of days that he read during the month. Determine which variable is independent and which is dependent. Then create a table to show how many minutes he has read in the first 7 days. So first thing I need to do is I need to determine the independent and dependent variable. Well, if I'm looking at this, T represents the total number of minutes read, and D represents the number of days that he read during the month, then the total number of minutes, so the total is going to depend on the days. So I'm going to say that number of days is our independent variable, and that's going to be represented by D, and the total minutes read is going to be our dependent variable. And we can figure that out by multiplying 30 times D to give us T. So now I need to figure out our table. So it says the first 7 days. So that's why it says the first 7 days down here. So I put number of days 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in that column. Now I need to start figuring out my dependent variables. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take T equals 30 times D, and anytime I see D, I'm just going to replace it with parentheses. That way I know what I need to replace it with. I put a 1 in there because that's what D represents in this row. A 1, so I put the 1 in there. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the next one. 30 times 1 is 30. So after 1 day, Marcus will have read for 30 minutes. So I want you to right now to take a minute, pause the video, and try to figure out what the rest of these columns are going to take. What's going to be in those columns? Go ahead and pause the video now. All right, so I'm going to give you a little hint. If you do not have something that looks like this, such as T equals 30 times something equals something, then you might want to go ahead and pause the video one more time and fix it. It should look something like this. This is incomplete, but this is kind of a good hint to get you started. So I'm going to give you a couple more. Go ahead and pause the video if you need to make any corrections, or you can continue watching. All right, so in each of those parentheses, you should have put whatever was in the first column in our independent variable column. So the first column was 1. The second column was 30 times 2, which equaled 60. So after 2 days, Marcus will have read for 60 minutes. Third column would be 3 because there's a 3 here. So 30 times 3 is 90. So after 3 days, it would have been 90 minutes. 30 times 4 days equals 120 minutes. 30 minutes per day times 5 days equals 150 minutes. 30 minutes for 6 days would be 180 minutes. And 30 minutes for 7 days would be 210 minutes. So if I wanted to figure out how much he had read after a week, then I would have said 30 times 7 is 210. After a week, he would have read for 210 minutes. All right, so I'm going to let you go ahead and take it. I'll read through this with you. So Kira designs websites. She can create 3 different websites each week. Kira creates an equation that will give her the total number of websites she can design given the number of weeks she works. The equation she creates is D equals 3W, where W is the number of weeks worked and D is the number of websites designed. Determine the independent and dependent variable. Create a table to show the number of websites she can design over the first 5 weeks. Before you get going, I want one more reminder that when you have a variable next to a number, that is representing multiplication. So this is saying 3 times W, or 3 times the number of weeks, is going to give you the total number of websites she can design. All right, at this point, go ahead and pause the video and try and complete this table like we did the last one. And welcome back. So I'm going to do this one step at a time, just so that if you find a mistake, I want you to go ahead and pause, fix the mistake, and see if there's anything else you need to fix based on whatever mistake you made. So the first thing I want to do is make sure we put the independent and dependent variable. So the independent variable here is the number of weeks worked, and the dependent variable is the number of websites designed. The number of websites designed depends on how many weeks she works. All right, and W is going to stand for weeks worked. D equals 3W would be the websites designed. said the first 5 weeks, so we put in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for our weeks. The first thing I like to do is I know that all of these are going to be the same except for whatever our independent variable is. So I'm going to go ahead and just write the equation out so that I can just plug those numbers in or use substitution. I put a 1 in here, a 2 in here, a 3 in here, a 4 in here, and a 5 in here. And then I go ahead and multiply those out. So 3 times 1 is 3, 3 times 2 is 6, 3 times 3 is 9, 3 times 4 is 12, and 3 times 5 is 15. So when you're done, you're going to go ahead and check your work against the answer key. The assignment is on the... All right, so really quickly, just what your assignment is going to be. You see you have two different options. You can either do the worksheet option. This is what it's going to look like on our learning activity for the week or the week at a glance. It'll look something like this. So this would be option 1. Let's grab my handy dandy laser pointer really quickly. Maybe, where is it? Never mind. Okay, so this is option 1. You can either print it out in complete notebook or you can print it out in complete or write it in your notebook. Remember, for that evidence, go ahead and take pictures or scan it in. And then you're going to want to attach it in Teams. Ms. Burns' class, please do not email me your evidence. I have a lot of emails and I'm scared I'm going to lose it or miss it. Your other option is the MathXL independent or dependent variables. Ms. Burns' class, you do need 100% because you can do the problems as much as you want. Ms. Miller's class, I would recommend you do the same. And also, in there, make sure you use that question help or the show me an example if you're confused. Let's see, what am I missing? Oh, if you can go ahead and screenshot or take a picture of your results so that I'm not having to go in between MathXL and Teams, that would be super helpful. If not, I will go check it out if you say you got 100%, but it would be really nice if you screenshotted the results so they don't have to jump back and forth. And once again, make sure you check your work against the answer key. This answer key is a separate document, but you should be able to find it. Keep your work somewhere safe. You'll be turning it in on Friday. Email your teachers with any questions. If you haven't used your full 30 minutes, finish your time on one of your choice math activities, for example, MobyMax. There is also a extra activity or extra practice activity at the bottom of the sheet this week about Minecraft if you're interested in that. All right, here are my references. I hope you guys have an awesome day, and you'll be hearing from me soon.